This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project. With your host, Sal Briggman.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and today's classroom, I think, is going to be shining a light on this area of the crowdfunding process, which hasn't been covered nearly enough. A lot of my episodes in the past, if you've gone into some of my archives, there are like over 200 episodes out there, so you can spend the entire year going through them, basically. But most of them, or a lot of them, talk about how do you get traffic, how do you get funding, how do you market your campaign, how do you get backers, how do you stand out, get in the media, like all these different things that go into bringing you attention. And the reason why is because that's what I wanted to know. Like, I was curious, why is it that these campaigns are getting magically funded online? Like, why is it a campaign? Why are people drawn to this product and it's getting millions of dollars on Kickstarter? I didn't understand it, and I wanted to demystify it. That's the whole name behind this podcast, Crowdfunding Demystified. So I basically was coming from that angle, but as I've been growing and as I've been maturing, I've also realized that one of the elements of the process that is so rarely talked about, and that I think is just kind of complicated, not very fun to learn about, and is just a big headache overall, is the fulfillment, shipping, and manufacturing process behind a product. So you have this idea in your head, maybe you sketch it out on a napkin, you finally find a manufacturer to make this thing for you. How then do you get that product from the manufacturer all the way across the seas, all the way across the land masses to the actual doorstep of your customer? And they can bring this in, they can open it up at the kitchen table, and they can enjoy whatever it is. They can be delighted and talk about it on social media and all that kind of stuff. Like, how do you actually do that? How do you coordinate that supply chain, if you will? So fulfillment is one aspect of this. And I wanted to sort of talk about this. So what I did was I reached out to Fulfillrite, which is one of the sponsors of my podcast. They've also been sponsoring my work since I got started in 2012. They sponsor my forum. They're really good when it comes to education, being very transparent and honest. And that's actually why I gravitated to them in the early stages of my career, because I'm like, these guys have the same values I do. There's like all these sharks in the fulfillment industry, and I didn't really want to work with any of them. I don't really like bringing like bad vibes, if you will, into my life. So I really resonated with the founders of Fulfillrite, and we had many conversations. They're in New Jersey, so like we would get dinner and stuff like that and talk about the industry, talk about crowdfunding, all that stuff. And we had really similar vision there. So I talked with one of the experts there, and he's actually coming on the show today to share with you things like, number one, what is the difference between doing Amazon fulfillment and using a smaller fulfillment company like Fulfillrite? Number two, if you want to do your own fulfillment, what should you know about that? Maybe you don't want to use a fulfillment company. Maybe you want to have these products shipped to your house and package them yourself and send them out there. How do you know about the pricing when it comes to fulfillment centers? Like the pricing that goes into, the labor intensive process, the storage, the postage, like what are the elements that come with the pricing and what should you expect? And finally, what are some like red flags, if you will, things you should know about before venturing down this path? How do you find one of these providers to help you, whether it is Fulfillrite or not, and how do you make that like a seamless transition and sort of building that as an element in your supply chain so you don't have to worry about it in the future? So you're going to hear all about that. And I think the most important thing for me is that you come away from this episode feeling like you have something to work with, that you're a little bit smarter when it comes to this aspect of your campaign. And also that you at least know what are some of the things you should be aware of before getting started with this and before adding this to your campaign, and whether or not this is something that's like even good for you, honestly. So you'll learn all about that today. I think you're going to like it. It's coming up right after this. Michael, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Sal, it's always great to connect with you and the community. I think we spoke previously, but there are so many people out there that really look forward to your advice, and it's always good for, as far as we're concerned, to be a part of it, to be able to share with you and with your listeners.
Thanks, man. So I'm kind of curious here, like, what got you into fulfillment? Because, I don't know, like, I guess I'm guilty of thinking like fulfillment and shipping and all that kind of stuff is kind of boring. What got you into fulfillment? Why are you so passionate about it?
Right. So it's interesting. It does sound really boring, and it's so boring that people sort of push it off until the end when they start dealing with it. But what we saw in terms of fulfillment, first of all, we have this fantastic opportunity to deal with all kinds of different exciting entrepreneurs, creators, people who are like super creative and super passionate about their products. So we get to see all kinds of new products that are coming out, and give advice about it, get to really get a feel for it. And as you're dead center in this world. These are the most exciting people in the world. These are people who are passionate about doing something different. They're disruptors. It's 2018 and they're coming up with a product that doesn't exist yet, or they're coming up with a game that hasn't been thought of yet. And dealing with people like that, dealing with their products, dealing with their process it's not just shipping. It's like, it really is exciting. Every single day I speak to different people, new people, with all kinds of products, with all kinds of questions, with all kinds of things. It's exciting. It's it's 6 o'clock, and I haven't stopped the whole day, and I'm ready to roll. So
yeah, that's awesome,
yeah.
Dude. I think the other thing too, being like you're a very integral part of actually getting those products into the hands of their customers. Like while you are working behind the scenes, you're really the one who's the solid process to get that from an order on the website to actually being a product in someone's hands or on their door. They open up their door and they can grab that package. So it's really, I can see that aspect of it being exciting. I think the other thing that's kind of cool about you guys, one of the reasons why I liked working with you is because so many of the archaic and like older fulfillment providers, their technology really freaking sucks, man. Like it's outdated. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So what you have in the fulfillment world is you have this dichotomy of robots doing fulfillment, in terms of the Amazons of the world and the huge, big, multi-billion-dollar players, where fulfillment is way technologically advanced, and they're doing, some incredible things. And then, but there's like a shrinking middle class. On the other side of it, if you can't be an Amazon, if you don't have billions of dollars in R&D and money to just spend on recreating the whole fulfillment process, you're going to be really, really archaic, because you're not going to keep up with trends in e-com, with trends in crowdfunding, transferring information, getting things right, scanning, barcodes, you're shipping, tracking, all these things are moving at lightning speed. And if you don't have that, if you don't have a really, really dedicated approach to moving at the speed of commerce now, you're going to really, really be behind. So what we find is, I think that, personally for our own niche, is not being Amazon, not being those big monolithic companies that only want to deal with customers that have thousands and thousands of orders a week, and at the same time being able to be as involved as possible in moving things forward, in making sure that we're process driven, and we're looking at the future every single day, like what's coming tomorrow. Investing in that.
That's awesome. I think too, like a lot of beginning creators, like they get into whole like manufacturing and fulfillment, and what they tend to find is like, since they don't know the industry, they're just like hit with so many fees, and they don't understand like the different parts of fulfillment or even how to choose a good provider. I think it could be really scary, particularly when you're new to this industry. So I kind of want to shed some light on how to decide who is the right fulfillment provider for you. I want to get more into some of the aspects of fulfillment. So maybe we could start by just talking about what is fulfillment, like what are the different stages of that?
Okay, great. So fulfillment has a lot of different it means something else to every single person. That's one of the problems, one of the issues, and then one of the things that you brought up, where it's just there's so many details about it, and everybody thinks fulfillment means something else. Fulfillment is actually order fulfillment. Is really what it means is supply chain and logistics. That's really what it comes down to. That means fulfillment begins on your factory floor. So if you're producing a product in China, and it's done, it's ready to be shipped out, it's sitting on the factory floor. Fulfillment begins right there. How are you moving that product all the way through all the different aspects that are necessary into the hands of your backers, into the hands of your customers? Getting it from that point into the hands of your customers there are many, many, many different steps along the way. A good fulfillment company will focus on the things they do right and connect you with other companies that do the other parts of it. That's really what you want to look for. So there's freight, there's customs, tariffs, duties, freight forwarding, there's importing. There's what classification is it when it gets into the United States or when it gets into the country that you need to send it to. Then there's getting it to the fulfillment center itself. There's having your bulk items that came in individually recorded, slotted, packed, and sending the right parts to the right backers, to getting the things to the people who ordered it the way it's supposed to be, sent to them, undamaged, not the wrong stuff. And on top of all of that, there's price. You want to make sure that you're doing all that at a cost that's going to work with your business model.
And also packaging. So, packaging is another big thing I think there.
Yeah, right. That's huge. That's absolutely right. So when it gets into the fulfillment center, how is it getting to you? How is it getting shipped? Is it getting shipped in its own package? Is it getting shipped in a package that the fulfillment center is providing? If you're not doing it with the fulfillment center, you're doing your own fulfillment. Where are you getting those packages from? How are you making sure that you have the right size, the right things are getting into the right package? So absolutely, packaging is a huge piece of it, and that begins so early on. Let's say you're doing a board game. You have some levels of rewards. So you're going to say, okay, so let me just throw in a few extra things for tier 1. That's great. Where are you throwing that into? Is the package that you thought about sending the board game in, is that package going to hold all the stuff that you want to just throw in? Do you realize there's an extra weight that's involved with it? So all these different aspects of it have to be thought out.
Oh my gosh.
And it gets tedious. And that's one of the reasons why people don't think about fulfillment until the end, because none of us like to think about things that we don't have answers to.
It sounds so complicated too.
Yeah, it sounds really complicated. So how do you make it less complicated? The way to do it is really, first of all, listen to CrowdCraft. Listen to people who've been around the block and understand what's going on and how things work. You're not inventing the wheel. There are people before you who've done it. There's a lot of information out there. Go to the right sources. Start doing research on your fulfillment centers, and speaking about fulfillment to people. Speak to the people who've done it before, and just be open and say, look, I've never done this before. I really could use some guidance. Do you have a half hour anytime that we can set up to discuss it? And ask stupid questions. And you're going to know, it's one of the, I guess we're talking about finding the right fulfillment center. One of the things that you're going to know right away is if a partner doesn't have time for you, if they don't want to deal with you, then they're not right for you, because they may be great people, but they're not looking for a customer like you. The ones that have time for you and are willing to sit down and talk it through with you, those are the ones that actually want you to be their customer, and they're going to go out of their way to make sure that you're satisfied.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip, because it also says something about when you're actually in a relationship with that fulfillment person, they probably won't be as attentive to you anyway if they're not already right off the bat. I think one of the things, though, when it comes to this industry is, like some industries, the pricing is very clear. When it comes to fulfillment, it seems like it's almost different depending on which center you go with. There are different parts. Can you talk a little bit about like the pricing? Yeah,
that's it, and that is probably what makes it the most complicated thing. You're right. There is no there's no just one way to go in terms of pricing. It's not like there's a, cell phone plans you can have. How many minutes are you getting, or how do they still do? I don't think they still do minutes anymore, but whatever.
Yeah, you're dating yourself there.
Yeah, man. But you can get for this. This is how much they're charging. This is how much they're charging. Fulfillment has so many, like we spoke about. There's so many different aspects to it, and every fulfillment center will charge a little bit differently. So the types of things that you're looking for in terms of pricing is your most basic price point is going to be a pick and pack fee. That's your fee for handling. We used to say like shipping and handling. Well, that's the handling part. What are you paying somebody else to do the job that you would do? You would be taking it, storing it, separating it, putting it into envelopes, putting it into boxes, putting a label on it. All that work, all that labor, there's a cost for that. Generally, it's called a pick and pack fee. There's other aspects to the fulfillment fees, but that's the most important one. And on top of that, there's going to be postage. So even if you do it all yourself, and sometimes that's the right thing to do, is to do fulfillment on your own, you're still going to have to pay for postage, whether you're using DHL, whether you're using FedEx, USPS, whichever method you're choosing to use, you're going to pay for postage. Your fulfillment center is also paying for postage. Sometimes they have better rates than you can get, but ultimately there's a postage fee, and you can't get away from that. So when you're looking at what your fulfillment costs are, look at what is fulfillment. What are the fulfillment fees? In others, what are the fees that the fulfillment company is charging for doing work for you? And what are the fees that have absolutely nothing to do with that you'd be paying anyway, so to speak, for that product? And that's really how you want to start separating it out in your mind. If you can do that, you can start comparing things a little bit easier in terms of from center to center.
So let me ask you a dumb question here. When someone makes an order, like let's just say they do a successful campaign, they now have all these backers, do they like hand you that data, or like how is it that you process and keep track of the orders? You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's there are many different ways of doing it. Ultimately, it will depend on the type of campaign it is. If it's a campaign where you have one or two products that are getting sent out, they can just download a CSV file. Like we'll give them a template, but they could just basically put it in the names, addresses, etc., and which product goes to where. It's fairly simple when you do it that way. Mm-hmm. When it's more complex, for example, they have many different tiers, or they have many different types of products that are going to different places, it becomes very complicated. So when you're using a place like Kickstarter, one of the things that Kickstarter, I guess, still hasn't completely tackled is making sure that those surveys at the end are organized in a way that fulfillment centers can actually use that data.
That data, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're good at Excel and you're good at these kinds of things, you'll be spending a lot of time organizing and putting different fields into the right places for an upload to a fulfillment center. Ultimately, yes, you can do that. You can upload everything that way. There are we generally encourage the creators that are doing these kinds of projects to use a pledge manager if they can. Mm-hmm. Now, those things are more expensive. There's BackerKit, and there's a charge for it and all that. But there's a huge upside, because what they do is they take all that data, they take all that information, and they besides for the other things they do with upselling, but they really organize it and give it over in a way that makes it a one-click integration where you can send your entire file to them. We upload it straight to us, and we have we had this last week. We had a project with 2,300 orders. We got all the data that came in. It came in all through BackerKit. The products came in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 4 o'clock that afternoon, 2,300 backers had shipping and tracking information.
Wow, and that's that's sufficient.
Yeah, it was amazing, but it's because everything was organized properly. Mm. So if you have lots of, so first of all, number one, don't overdo it with all the different options. nobody cares. That's not going to make or break your project, because you have 10 different options for 10 different levels of backing. Keep it simple. Your backers are going to be happy. You're going to be happier. Your fulfillment center is going to be happier. Even if you're doing your own fulfillment, you're going to be thrilled. Keep it as simple as you can. Obviously, some things are really more personalized, but try to keep it simple. It really doesn't. It sounds like a great idea to offer just 25 different tiers. It's not usually a great idea, and you end up paying for it later.
Totally. So let me just interject there really quickly too, because obviously fulfillment is a service. So how can people know if this is something that they can afford? Like, you obviously have to have margins built in for that. When people come to you and they're like, I don't know if I can afford it, I don't know if it's worth it, what do you usually say to them? What advice do you impart there? I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at the Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
If somebody says, I don't know if I can afford it, I usually think they probably can't, because what it means is that they haven't really gone through the reality of what shipping and fulfillment costs. It means that they're basing their margins on things that are really, really, really slim. And at the end of the day, they can't afford it now. That doesn't mean that they should do it themselves. What it means is they should stop and rethink what their project is. They should say, well, maybe I'm not ready yet to do it. Maybe I don't have enough backers, or maybe I need to just rethink whether this is a viable project to begin with. If you can't afford fulfillment, for the most part, you probably are. Your campaign is probably not going to be super successful, because there's going to be other charges and things like that that are going to come up. We all know that, all the surprise stuff that happens with manufacturing and all these things, where you're going to have to adjust. You're going to have some sort of a budget that can tolerate it. But just to answer that question, somebody says, I don't know if I can afford it, I'm not sure. We always start with, what's your product, weight, size, dimension, and where do you think your backers are going to be? Those are the two questions. Weight, size, and dimension is much easier for people to start talking about, especially the ones that are organized and they've been dealing with manufacturers. Maybe it hasn't been manufactured yet, but they have really good prototypes. They're able to give us that information. Where your backers are going to come from is a lot harder. They don't know, and the destination is going to impact fulfillment more than almost anything else, because if you're doing a lot of international, your price is going to be not twice as much as domestic. It could be 3, 4, 5 times as much as domestic. If you're doing, if you have a heavier product and it's going across the United States, even to other places, it's going to affect that cost. So figuring out where your backers are going to be probably is the hardest thing in the world for
creator in that beginning stage.
You do that in that beginning stage, yeah.
So to give you an example here, so I recently recorded a podcast with the Ever Ratchet campaign. So Brian came on and he talked about his Indiegogo, which has raised $165,000 on Indiegogo, which is pretty awesome. But what he's doing is he's shipping all of these products to his house. He's packaging it all basically himself and then sending it out. So you have people who are like, oh, I don't understand. Like, why don't I just do that? Like, why don't I just ship it to my house? What do you think the value is of sort of removing yourself from that part of the chain and handing it off to someone else?
Right. So, it's great. I actually had, and that's a really big project. That's surprising. A project that big for somebody to think they can handle it on their own is really, really, it's either impressive or crazy or both. I had a customer who called me yesterday, actually, and he told me, we're really thinking of I'm just going to take off a week of work, and me and my parents are going to go down to the basement, and we're going to just pack the stuff and send it out. Okay, sounds awesome. Great, do that. And then I asked him, so you're doing this as a side project, which most creators are. They're not full time in it. So he said, yeah. I said, how's that going to work with work? Like taking off that time? Well, I'm going to give up vacation time. I'm going to give up this and that and the other thing. Are you sure it's going to take a week? Well, we're hoping. What if it takes 2 weeks? I'm going to get fired. I was like,
Jesus,
I was like,
not good.
What are you? Just think through. Just think it through. Think through that. Always build in that if you haven't really picked, packed, shipped, done all these things, bought the boxes, made the boxes, taped them up, put the labels and got the labels printed, then bring them to a UPS or USPS place. Like, it's going to take you a lot more time. First time you do anything, or second time, it's just going to take, always know it's going to take you a lot more time than you think it's going to take. It's like building an IKEA,
Oh my gosh, dude. Okay. Right? So I recently moved into a new apartment, right, in Williamsburg, and I got a new desk for my apartment, and this thing is like, it looks really nice. I'm like, oh, okay, like I can assemble it myself. Like it's, $40 or $50 to get someone to assemble it. So I'm like, no, I don't want to spend that money. So then I end up on the floor of my apartment spending like 4 hours trying to get this thing assembled. Right. And I'm just so frustrated and have such a headache at the end. And I'm like, oh, I really just should have bit the bullet and like just invest in that.
And that's it, right. And that's in the best situation where when you're all finished, it's perfect. In most of the time, you're all finished, and somehow there's this one piece that you just left out, and you have no idea where it's supposed to go, and the drawer is just not closing right. The same thing happens with fulfillment. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that your goal is to make sure your backers are getting what they wanted, what they paid for. They're getting their rewards, and they are happy with you. That's your goal. They don't want it to be damaged. They don't want it to be stuffed into a box that doesn't work. They don't want 2 because you just got confused and you put 2 in instead of 1, or 3 in instead of 4. They don't want that, and those kinds of mistakes are going to happen unless you have a really, really, really good system in place. So if you want to hire, your mother and brother and cousin and have everybody sit in the assembly line, what's that going to cost you? Or what's that going to cost them? And, and you'll be paying for that at every Thanksgiving dinner for the rest of your life, by the way. So be careful before you bring family in to do manual labor for you. But yeah, so the costs are there. I still say at the same time, if you have an easy product, you have a 1 SKU type of product, maybe it could ship in its own box, or maybe it goes into a padded mailer or something. You can order those, get them in. Everybody gets the same thing. Yeah, it may be save you a lot of time and money to just do it yourself. And that you never, always think that maybe that's a possibility. Once it gets complicated, usually not.
Here's another question. So let's just say, like, okay, I'm ready to do fulfillment, and I'm trying to pick out a provider. Why is it that I would go with a company like yours off of instead of like Amazon or something? Because I know Amazon fulfillment, like that's a really big thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So you have to, in terms of fulfillment, choosing the right partner. Sometimes Amazon's the right place. Absolutely, it sometimes is. You mentioned something before that's really, really important. Not every fulfillment center is going to charge the same thing for every service. So you'll have, for example, some fulfillment centers are going to charge you, $80 for storage for a pallet. Some of them will give you free storage for Kickstarter projects. Some will charge you for receiving, $50 each time they're receiving something. Some won't charge you for that. Some will charge you less or more pick and pack fees. So there's all kinds of different aspects to it. If let's say your pick and pack fee per item. Some will charge you per item. Some will give you just a price for all your orders will be the same price. You have to know when you're looking at Amazon, you're looking at all kinds of fulfillment centers. You cannot start from what they're offering. You have to start from what your needs are. So if your needs are, you have a product that's a really expensive product, for example, and it's the shipping itself doesn't really make a difference whether you're shipping it from Amazon or from any other place. Look at how Amazon charges. Are they charging you based on the cost of your product? Are they taking a part of the sale? In many cases, they are. They're taking a part of, like they're charging you. They may charge you less for fulfillment, but they're getting a percentage of your sale. If you have an expensive product, that's going to cost you a lot more than going to a place that's, like, for example, Fulfillrite, let's do a shameless plug, but Fulfillrite, we don't care how much your product costs because we charge you for what our labor is. So if your product costs $100, it'll cost the same amount for us to pick and pack it as if it would cost $20 or $500. So know what your product is, know what your needs are, know what does your company need, what is your company like. If you're going to have lots of stuff for storage, in other words, you have a few different items and you're not going to be able to fulfill the whole thing right away, and you're going to need it to be stored for a few months until all the different things come in. You're going to want to make sure that you're dealing with a fulfillment center that storage costs are a little lower. If you have just one item or you have lots of different components that have to go in and there's a pick fee for every different item that goes in, that's going to be a lot more significant to you than whether somebody has a little bit of a discount on shipping or even storage costs and things like that. So understand what your product is, understand what your needs are, and then build out from there. Find a fulfillment center that works with that model.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question here when it comes to, let's just say like I run a successful campaign and then I'm building out a business from that. Because a lot of people, they start a business from Kickstarter, literally like they start an online store and they're selling this more and more. I think that one of the biggest like fears would be that I get locked into like this long contract with a fulfillment provider or fulfillment center. And, as I continue to sell more, my costs are going to be increasing as well. What are your thoughts on that? Like people that are looking to have a longer term solution in that way? I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at BackerKit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
Right. Excellent. First of all, number one, be upfront about it. When you're making that call, you send an email to the fulfillment center and you're inquiring about it, be as clear as possible about what your goals are for the near future and for the distant future. And based on their reaction, you'll start seeing whether it's a place that can work with you, whether you're getting locked into something that you don't like or that you don't want, or whether things are going to change. Are they going to start changing pricing on you? Are they going to start changing terms on you? Be upfront, and you'll get a feeling right away what the response is going to be on that. So that's just right off the bat. The next thing I would say is that it is so important to know this in advance for yourself, because Fulfillrite, for example, we don't have long-term contracts. We're month to month. You don't have to. You can sign up for an account with us, never pay a cent until we start actually doing work for you, and you can leave at any time. So we don't lock anybody in, and I think that there are other film centers that also don't. Some of them do. Be careful about the ones that do, because you just want to make sure. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. Just make sure that you understand what's going on. All that being said, without contracts, without anything else, even if you can break it at any time, you will pay a price, whether it's in money or it's in time or it's in resource or frustration, for having to make a change. So all your product is in one place. Now you say, great, I have no contracts. I can move at any time. Go ahead, move. It's like I could, when you're in an apartment and you're like, I don't like my landlord, I'm just going to move. No, there's no such thing as I'm just going to move. You have to find another place. You have to get moving trucks. That's literally the way it is with fulfillment centers. So the inertia, you just want to just stay where you are, because it beats having to pick up and start over again. That happens a lot. So Be careful. Even if there's no contracts, try to make the right decision as early. You don't want to be doing it. You don't want to move twice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just have like one more question for you. Come to the end of the episode. I honestly admit, I think fulfillment is something that I'm not as privy to. I focus a lot more on marketing with this podcast. So I'd love it. Do you believe that I've left out anything in terms of like the creators that come to you with their common questions, with some of the stuff they want to know? Is there anything that I left out that we should impart on to the audience? Things to be aware of, words of warning, or really any kind of final tip?
Yeah. So great. First of all, I think you do have a really significant understanding of fulfillment. I mean, more than a lot of people do. So what I would say is when you're looking at fulfillment costs, start from, like we mentioned all the way in the beginning, start from understanding what is my total shipping cost going to be. Don't just look at one aspect of it. Look at the whole thing. Look at your pick and pack fees. Look at what is freight. Do I have a good customs broker? How do they work together with fulfillment companies? Think about all those things. It's scary because I don't even know what a customs broker is half the time. Go ask those questions and start getting some answers. There's a lot of great information out there. Just start putting it together, and never be afraid to ask a question like, "How do I get? Do you guys do freight or pickup or anything like that?" Because all those things are going to go into the calculations of what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And finally, just the final thing is ultimately at the end of the day, when you're choosing a fulfillment center or you're thinking about fulfillment, you need to be thinking about your backer receiving their product. That's where you have to start in your mind. What is it going to take for them to be delighted when they get that package? That it was delivered on time, that it was delivered accurately, that it was professionally packed, that I got tracking information, there was good communication on it. Start from there, and let that inform all your decisions.
Awesome. Very well said.
Yeah.
So
that's what I would. I would just say that's where where people get lost is in process. Keep the goal in mind and discuss it with anybody, any potential partner that you can have. Say, that's my goal. How can you help me get there?
Well said. Well, guys, I urge you. Fulfillrite has been awesome over the years. They really got started with me when I just started my blog, CrowdCrux, back in 2012. Over the years, they've sponsored the podcast because they believe in education. They also sponsor our online forum. So if you have any questions, you can always ask questions there. They're really at the forefront, I think, when it comes to wanting to connect you with good education, getting questions answered. And from the people that I've sent them, they're always surprised that they're willing to pick up the phone literally and just answer questions if you have them about fulfillment and such. So if you are interested and you go to fulfillrite.com, please make sure that you say you came from this podcast because they'll be extra nice to you.
Absolutely.
And also we'll spend a little bit more time there. If you don't say
that, we may hang up on you. That's right. So.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all this great information. I'll be sure to link it up in the show notes, the link to your guys' website, fulfillrite.com. And we'll have to have you back and maybe go more in depth into something else like international shipping or some of these other topics.
Excellent. Great. Really, really a pleasure. Always enjoy talking to you guys and sharing what we can with the whole community.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. I invite you to go in and look at and listen to some of the other episodes that I got out there. We have more than 200 episodes on this podcast, chocked full of valuable information, killer resources, incredible entrepreneurs, rock star entrepreneurs, I'd even say, who come on the show and they're really paying tribute. They're sort of paying it back to the community. They got their start in crowdfunding. They're raising 6-7 figures. Now they maybe even have a big online business with employees. And they sort of come back on this show. And many of them actually have also listened to the show. And they share with you what they did right, how they were able to pull this off, how they were able to accomplish it. It's a really cool karmic system, if you will. People going to crowdfunding, raising money, connecting with the community and backers, and then coming back and sharing what worked for them so that they can help other, upstart, up-and-coming entrepreneurs who want to build a business, who want to create more freedom in their life, who want to be their own boss. It's a really special time, I think. So I invite you to go and dive into some of those other episodes, and also make sure that you leave a rating and review on iTunes if you do like this show. But finally, if you are interested in working with a trusted provider when it comes to fulfillment, I always recommend Fulfillrite because These guys, number one, they have it locked down when it comes to having a very efficient process. But number two, they are super trustworthy. Like, I've been working with them for the last 6 years, and they're always there to answer questions for creators. They're always there to help them along the process, and they'll very honestly like just turn you away if they don't think they can help your project. So they're very clear and transparent on that, and I really connect with those types of values. So if you go to fulfillrite.com, FULFILLRITE.com, make sure you also say you're coming from either CrowdCrux or this podcast, and they'll treat you super nice, which is always an added bonus or an added perk. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and you learned a lot, and I will see you next time.